Okay, and so we are inviting our next speaker, Jagna Lewandowska.
Hello everyone, and thank you girls for the invitation once again. Like Inga said, I would like to say a few words about the activity of Arton Foundation, where I work with Marika Kuzmicz, and which is and we are picking up the similar challenges, I think, that Inga and Andra here preparing this exhibition. Arton Foundation was established in 2010 in Warsaw, and we are a non-profit organization, and the gallery concentrated mostly on archives from 60s and 70s, archives of Polish art from that period. And we are organizing mainly private archives of artists, which consists of photographs, documents, negatives, and films, which catalogued and digitized extend our digital database of Polish art scene of those years. And we promote the effects of our work in films that we produce and publications. I left two of them, maybe. And exhibitions concerning the archives. Arton Foundation is located in the old printing facility in the center of Warsaw. Since 2010, the printing company is in liquidation, so we can rent a space in a post-industrial building. It's also quite awesome, like the lavatories, because it used to be a step dancing school before that, so we have a really great floor there. But we will have to move in a year or year and a half, so we have the same problem as in Reykjavik. Our current exhibition is Ludmiła Popiel's works, almost forgotten artist who was one of the pioneers of conceptual art in Poland. Her practice was based mainly on op art paintings, as well as drawing and conceptual projects. She was co-founder of legendary Osieki planners, which brought together artists, scientists, and art theorists to provide the interesting environment for innovative artistic experiences. And the 70s, that period was a really great time in Polish and whole European art, because artists creating under the political regime in Poland began to focus on the art theory and properties of the medium, film medium, photographic medium. And frequently they were establishing artistic collectives, such as the workshop of the film form, which was based on film and associated some outstanding individuals, such as Wojciech Bruszewski, Paweł Kwiek, Józef Robakowski, Andrzej Różycki, and Ryszard Waśko. They were really great artists, and the workshop functioned between cinema and contemporary art. They were unmasking the ways the film can be manipulated, and they were criticizing the cinematography with its narrative inclinations, as well as whole educational systems, although they had their own really well-developed research program and technical infrastructure from the film school in Łódź. A large part of documents of the workshop and the works of individual artists found place in our archives, and initiated the whole network of links to the other hubs and the individual artists of a reminded, unknown, or forgotten. And art archives treated now like historical data or documentation only from the past events. They are forgotten, or maybe covered, like hide it in the private space, in the homes, sometimes under the couches or somewhere in the attics. And this particular archive is the archive of Andrzej Jurczak, which haven't been taken out since 1980 when he emigrated and he passed it to his friends. So it laid in the attic and we discovered like 3 years ago. And our investigations often lead to these extraordinary discoveries, and it's a lot of fun to do that, of course, but it's also a great responsibility of choosing the proper way to bring back to the art history those names and those artists. All works of the mentioned artists and their photographs and films you can find in our online repository. The Arton online archive includes photograph films transferred from 16 and 8 millimeters negatives, as well as notes, sketches, and other stuff. And that's the base of our activities, our all activities. And we are trying to avoid the stereotypes that are connected with archival materials. And from the beginning, we were wondering how to reintroduce the archives to the modernity and how to present those works to the nowadays audience. And it was a really long way to the point that we are today. The first archive that I was dealing with was Mtg Skis Archive. It wasn't easy to present because he was a performer mainly and ballet dancer, and he studied architecture, so he was like all-around artist based in Warsaw. And in 1976 he wrote the manifesto Art as Contextual Art, which was really echoed in the whole Europe, so he was also a great theoretician. And what left was mainly documentation of his performances, so photography and a lot of documents. We decided to connect the exhibition with the premiere of the documentary film about the artists. And all the prints we showed were available for the audience and could be viewed and studied as in the reading room. And the film Jan Świdziński in the context of art was made with collaboration with the artist, and consisted of documentary material as well as short film forms that were made in the present times and were based on unpublished screenplays made by the artist. So it was like the catalogue of Świdziński's statements combined with text and photographs and performances that were recording during the 2 decades of his work. And we put a lot of effort to accomplish that event, and it wasn't exactly what we wanted to achieve. And the artist family expected like the classical monographic exhibition, so some of the works were notoriously segregated by them. That was a hard situation. So after that experience, we decided that we and our archives, we need a stronger curatorial thinking. So our next projects, although based on archives, they had a stronger character. Like this exhibition of Zdzisław Jurkiewicz. He was a painter, photographer, architect, poet as well. Jurkiewicz took up his studies in architecture, but he used to paint. And one of Jurkiewicz's passions was astronomy. He built his first telescope in the age of 13, I think. And so he transformed his whole apartment in Wrocław, his attic, into the Kunstkammer, like studio and observatory in Wrocław. And it witnessed artistic activities only visible now in the photographic documentation. He was doing it just before the camera for his own. Towards the end of 70s, Japanese mice and hamsters were the big topic of his art. He built some labyrinths for them and some castles made of glass. And it was followed by the plants, which used to be observed by him in his apartments. And also he invented some interesting facilities for water them, as you can see on the right side. In this project, Jurkiewicz photographed the travel of the sun on the wall of his kitchen. He measured it as well. And through the attic window, Jurkiewicz photographed the stars, the whole constellations using this telescope, which he built, and also some other events in false documentation down there. He faked the plane crash using the small toy of the plane. He also photographed the falling light, electric discharge in his own apartment. That's on the top photography. And in our exhibition, it was really minimalistic. We wanted to focus only on the works that were created in the privacy of his apartment. So no paintings from outside, only things that happened in that small apartment. And it was accompanied by the discrete music compiled from the household sounds, like everyday little sounds that we hear and that we didn't notice. Yeah, so it was it. And slightly differently, I approached to the achievements of Andrzej Jurczak, whose photographs and texts reminded in obscurity that I mentioned since the 80s when he emigrated and then died. In this case, I decided to use the documentation of his activities as a curator and animator. Because in 1977 he became the artistic director of Mała Gallery, small gallery in Warsaw. And the program stood out with a very experimental approach when he was a chief. It was heavily influenced by the private interests revolving around the conceptual and minimal art of that time. In his own work, he undertook a range of experiments to explore some semantic properties of the medium. Follow the example of some games, language games. He created the whole series of so-called commutations. You can see it now. Which meanings has changed through use the one movable element which travels through the composition. He also built the special camera, panoramic camera, where the model rotated in front of the open shutter, and the stretch portrait took the whole entire role of the film. So this private archive, rediscovered after many, many years, helped to restore artists' creative root, as well as some kind of taste of cultural life concentrated around the gallery he ran. And I was constructing the completely forgotten artist figure. That was really interesting. On the basis what's left, and that was the handwriting, some notes, some scraps of friends' memories, and I could fully realize that that was only a fragmentary image. So during the exhibition, the main aim was to restore the memory of him, of Andrzej Jurczak, and I decided to use the documentation as a documentation from the exhibitions held in the Artists' Gallery from the 70s. And together with with space designer, we have created new forms referring to the past, to the design solution of the past, and by juxtaposition of modern interior with forms that's resembling scenography, you can say, from the 70s, as well as mixing modern reprints with some archival photographs, original archives. We managed to achieve some interesting clash, and yeah. We also projected the new forms that he didn't invent it, but we present like the archives on it, and on the forms that he invented, we presented reprints, modern reprints, so it was changing. And a similar effect I wanted to achieve in an ebook that you can find on our website, where I compiled the theoretical text with the contemporary interpretation of his work, and a long interview not with art historian, but with a scientist, like Jurczak himself, because he was a mathematician, looked at modern art form from a different perspective. The last exhibition I would like to mention today, it was Wojciech Gruszewski exhibition, one of the founders of the workshop of the film form that I mentioned, and Mateusz Sadowski, the young Polish artist who referred to his work. Wojciech Gruszewski worked across a variety of media, from film, installation to the photography and performance. He graduated from the Department of Cinematography as well as film direction, and he explored some linguistic and non-linguistic codes describing reality, as well as the practice of traps, as he called it. That was catching the context that existed at the junction between reality and human perception. And that was the inspiration for the Across Realities exhibition, which results from nearly 2 years of Arton's work on Gruszewski's private archive. That's the documentation of old exhibitions, and that's our exhibition. And we wanted it to be as modern as possible, because Gruszewski always was up to date with the latest technologies. He was really modern on his time, and we reconstructed his video installations from his sketches, you can see it here, and the photographic documentations. Therefore we use flat panels TV and digital cameras, even if in times of formation of his ideas these all things didn't exist at all. So in these installations, Gruszewski treated mechanical and electronic means of transmission as clear and unlimited by mental schemes. And this approach is still visible today, even with using different tools. And Mateusz Sadowski works at the same exhibition used similar tools to present the moments when what we perceive as objective, such as time and space, becomes individual, therefore unique. So the artist's works were broadening the viewer's field of vision and multiplying his possible points of view. And that exhibition was closest to the realization of what we consider as our mission, because it used the latest technology while working with archives, and also combined the artistic generations. So that was only one step to the creation of the film program that was mentioned, and it's called Arton Review. And that's the final point of this presentation. Arton Review is a cycle of screenings based on the resources of our digital repository. And it served as the inspiration for the young generation of artists who create a series of videos and short films. And the artists invited to the project have been selected after the analyzing of their working methods, as well as certain level of sensitivity, you can say, that led them to the artist from the repository. That's one of the meetings. It was screening concentrated around Paweł Kwiek's work. And the artist himself, together with Łukasz Jastrubczak, he was the young adept of art, they reconstructed a performance from the 70s, during which the reflection of light from the projector was aimed at the audience, and that was one of non-camera performances of Paweł Kwiek from the 70s. And he announced it as a normal film screening, so the audience was coming and they were just taking part in the performance, not in the screening. Jastrubczak also shot the short video showing the telepathic connection that was established with Paweł Kwiek, and they really became friends, and they still have a contact, not only telepathic, but the telephonic one as well. And this film and some new videos, which will have their premiere, we will show here in Latvian Center for Contemporary Art on 14th of April, so soon. I can invite you to this event. And now I would like to present you a video by Agnieszka Lasota from the previous Arton review, which was inspired by domestic works by Zdzisław Jurkiewicz that I mentioned, and the other video, One Time Two, by Mateusz Sadowski from Across Realities exhibition, inspired by technological fascination of Wojciech Bruszewski. And the second video is usually shown as an object on the specific TV set, but here I will just show you on the screen, and we can treat it as a documentation of the work. So, thank you.
When we work in generally in Latvian Center for Contemporary Art, we also research history and publish books, and then it happens that of course we interpret art history or history, and then inevitably we are using the theories of post-colonialism or decoloniality. And it can happen, or it has happened, that, for example, the older generation artists or art historians would not completely agree with the interpretation that we are giving to the exhibition, to the archive, or to whatever processes, because they would not, like living through that moment, they would not really associate with these theories that we would be using from gazing from this moment to the past. And then I was wondering if you are also, in your work, meeting these kind of difficulties or challenges of interpretation.
Yeah, of course, the most vivid experience that we have, that was during the Jolanta Markola's exhibition. I think we talked about this. Who is the one of the artists that we thought that will fill up this gender gap that girls were mentioning, because not a lot of artists from the 60s and 70s functioning right now or in the new theories. And we organized her the big exhibition. It was really feministic in our way of thinking, and a lot of art historians and critics who went and see this exhibition wrote about this in this from this side. And she completely disagreed with that. She said that she is not feminist and that she don't agree with all the gender analyzing. So that's the hard thing. And but they have to face it. And in some time, we received the mails or other letters that they were rethinking this, and that's something new for them. So yeah. Happens a lot.
Last question. You said that you are organizing the private archives of artists, but what happens with these archives afterwards? Do they stay with you, or they go to other institutions, or they go to dealers and galleries? And so, in such a case, how you are funded, and do you get any kind of profit of creating awareness for those lost archives?
We are just borrowing the archives from the artists if they are still living, from the families or from the institutions. And we are digitizing it and like trying to conserve it or do something to preserve them. And we are giving it back, so we only have license for using it, and we don't have any profits from that. And we are funded mainly from the grants from the ministry, but now we are in hard times because we didn't get any foundations. So I think something must change, and we are waiting and trying to find some financial support from the private sector, because otherwise we will stop functioning, because it all depends on the ministry grants.